Welcome, welcome everybody. Another show, another moon, another ride through space. Welcome, my friends, my lunatics. I see NGC showing up first. Hello, Spaceling. I just saw your email, actually. I think I have to reread it. But I'll definitely check it out. And I saw you want me to upload Bring Me Back. I can do that. I just was, I wanted to work on it a bit more, but I actually haven't had a chance, so maybe I'll just upload one of the versions that's good, but I can also play it right now. Either way, hopping in here for a music stream tonight. Figured we'll hang out a bit. It's quite hot. Talked a lot on the last show, not a lot of music, so tonight's kind of a request show. Maybe I'll chat a little bit more about this Sonus ether. Let our friends trickle in. The jets are rumbling. It's a 94.4% waxing gibbous, a couple of days away from full. 12:20 a.m. August 10th. And tomorrow I think there's some sort of Saturnian lunar conjunction or closeness. We're going to check that out. I see Saturn coming up as well. Debbie Carson, how's it going? Yes, please. And Gnostic Chef, hello. Cool. So I'm going to vibe with y'all for a little bit here and Bring Me Back.
Cosmic revelations, the elgato.
was a little bring me back. Hopping in to say what's up to everybody. I see more Jello. I see Morgan Ellis. Shout outs. It's happening. Hope everybody's feeling great tonight. Yeah, it's super duper bright. It's got this nice kind of mist. I could barely track tonight because you can't see any stars. But somehow it's working, and got some lovely visibility on Aristarchus at the top left. We're going to do some zoomed in shots there. Chrysium on the right. Proclus looking really bright. Serenity, Tranquility, Tycho, the usual suspects, but mostly hexagons. Mostly lots of hexagons. So, some more tunes. I see our friends coming in. The rocket ship is about to take off, but we'll do another jam here. I think a Midnight Moon might work.
Oh, the midnight moon, you'll be right, oh, with the midnight moon, we'll be right, oh, set the midnight moon, set light, oh, that's the midnight moon, we'll be right.
All right. Just wanted to check out this Terminator line coming in on the left at 94%. It shows us a very specific part of the moon beyond Mare Imbrium. So I think it's pretty neat. I haven't looked at it in a while, and it's so sharp tonight. So that's why I have this brightened up all the way. You can see some violet fringing on the right, kind of curling around due to refraction. But yeah, love to zoom in here. Want to hop in, say what's up to Silent Murmur, Flat Plane Oregon, David, Derek Richards, great to see y'all, welcome. Whimsical Renegade, Hot Rod Scott, what's going on everybody? What's happening? Feeling good tonight. A little tired, but you know, energized from this week of thinking about things, and the show from the other night was really fun. I felt invigorated by being able to share that type of information and get it more and more articulated. So I've been working on some cool slides, some interesting stuff that I'm going to share soon. I'll put a sneak peek. You can see it in the thumbnail, but I started to work on some 3D models of the field, the human biofield, because there are some images out there, but I feel like I can do something interesting with it, something that people haven't exactly done yet. So let me pull this up. Let me see if I can find it. Is that gonna work? Huh. Let me see if I can shrink that a little bit. Yeah, I don't know why it looks like it's being multiplied. Let me get it more prepared while I have a song on. Let's put on Dark Rooms here. And let me know if you have any requests too.
I can feel like the wave. I can feel like the waves. I can feel.
So interesting, because there are a couple of concepts that I'm still trying to work out. Maybe y'all can give me your opinion on it, because so Dan Winter talks about the 9 toruses, you know, the idea of the 9, and other ideas that I've read in the past, I can't find the source again, but I also have read about the 9 toroidal energy rings that create the human Birkeland, that outline the human Birkeland filament. But more traditionally, you see more 7 chakra points. So it's interesting that they also, the colors associated with them in popular visual terms, but I also imagine that these are the close enough to the correct colors that these chakra or toroidal knots or plasma knots or plasmoids are harmonically resonating at, and this is the color that is reflected off of these particular energy points. So here you can see the outline of a human, arms stretched out, almost a bit of a T pose, and then you have little filamentary Birkeland lines coming off the skin, like just on the normals, coming off right off a little bit. And this is kind of similar to the way you see those images of Carillion photography, electroplate photography around the human body. So if you imagine tiny little static charge electric lightning bolts surrounding our human body now, granted it's kind of displaced and turbulence, and there are little spots that are cut out, spots that are connected, spots that are not. But if you imagine that every living being or every living particle in the universe is surrounded by these tiny little filaments, and then these filaments expand outwards. Let me check in the chat. I see Fantasy, what's going on? Heck yeah, I love it. 9 denotes completion. So yeah, I was trying to figure out exactly where our 9 would be. Would it be one above the halo, right? One above the crown chakra, and maybe the feet at the ground plane where we meet the Earth's surface, or the surface that we stand upon, or that we're grounded to. So you can see what I'm trying to get at over here. So not only do you have the chakra points and the toroidal rings around them, those toroidal rings are their own individual frame of reference. So that's how you have the, the groin thinks for itself and the stomach thinks for itself, and on and on. And I love that idea that our system is a set of thinking brains, membranes. So you have the chakra system, which is really interesting and a whole thing that I could probably isolate. And then top and bottom, you have if you looked at it from the top down, you'd see that these spirals, these helixes, are actually golden mean spirals emanating outwards, oscillating outwards from the center of I imagine our entire source, and also probably from every single chakra as well. This is the type of stuff you see after you drop. I know, right? A little simpler, but yeah. Also, some of this is just top of my, just thinking off the top of my head, trying to visualize some of this stuff. So it's not like 100% accurate. I know I was taking some inspiration from Buddy James from the Darty set, and also, I mean, traditionally these shapes have been around for a long time, right? And so I think the first time I really ever saw somebody equate the human toroidal field was Thrive, the Thrive documentary, maybe like 15 years ago or something like that. And then around 20 years ago, there was the What the Bleep Do We Know and The Elegant Universe, where they showed the particles and like people not falling through the floor because they were resisted by particles, but there was a ton of space between these particles, yet we didn't fall through the floor. So there was that. And yeah, so what else is here? So we have, of course, we have the twisting Birkeland filament coming through the top, and leaving us into the Earth, so we're grounded, and we're also being powered from the outside, as well as within, but of course, the part that's missing from our contemporary understanding of the human experience is that we have a field, and we also have power coming, we're powered as beings from the outside, not just from within. So I have 3 layers of the toroidal ring here, and also they're slightly distorted. You can imagine that they're not a perfect torus around the body, and even more so, I've simplified it here so that they're much smoother, and you kind of start to see the outline of the apple here. Interestingly enough, if you kind of squint, you'll see that this is already like the 2 eye sockets of a human head or an animal head. And so the larger whole is already completely apparent to those who are willing to see. Silent Murmur says there would be two more above the crown chakra that represent the moment before contraction, 0, 0, and contraction 0 before the light shines forth. All right, so I'm going to model that. I imagine they get smaller. I feel like the way I've modeled it is starting to look right, but it's not complete yet. Anyway, let's get back to our moon, but this is one of the slides. And of course, the one I was trying to show earlier was laying the same image on its side. You'll see that you could very easily come up with the whole planetary orbital mechanics side of it. Check this slide out. It's like an eyeball from the side. It's like the Earth, but it's also like a modal harmonic cascade. Now, I have it going very evenly here. I imagine that it's not perfectly even either. But these harmonic oscillations are how I think our human organism and most organisms actually become conscious of the field by resonating with chakra with field, and then collective chakra with entire biofield, and field with other people's fields and earth fields, and so on and so forth. And every single unit at every single size is this same, this similar geometry inherently. Kronos says, I see squatter men. Yes, exactly. I want to integrate those images too, from just because the two nodal points underneath the arms, that are represented in the plasma discharge, we don't tend to think that around our sides we have two tight toroidal knots kind of implanted in our field, and it's even for me like that I completely not understand it but believe this stuff, and I feel like I understand it, but either way it's still it's an interesting concept to have those two points of energy on the sides. They're not immediately apparent, but I know I'm rambling, but it's because I love this stuff. And you can see I have the whole dotted pattern kind of outlining. And these points, these foci, each and every one of them has its own field, right? Its own toroidal flux and hyperboloid. And each of them, of course, has filaments, Birkeland filaments, running throughout from top to bottom, or bottom to top, doesn't really matter. Mostly that everything's interconnected at every scale through electrical filaments, whether or not they're very perfectly straight over here, like curling and twisting around each other, knotted. All right, let's take a look at our moon. Kind of want to get in there with Aristarchus because it's like one of those perfect shots. You can see Aristarchus crater, Herodotus, Schroeder's Valley, and Aristarchus Plateau. One of the real pivotal points for me looking at the moon's surface and being like, how the hell were some of these features formed, especially Aristarchus? Let's see what else in the channel just before I move on. Russian nesting dolls. I mean, exactly. I mean, it's a great analogy. Interestingly, I've been trying to do that visually to try and make Russian nesting dolls, but it's kind of like you can't actually take the model and expand it outwards without it kind of running into itself. So Russian nesting dolls, that kind of the perfection of scaling outwards is quite interesting. It has to be done in a lot of in a few different normal directions at the same time, but then it also has to be remodeled. Fascinating. Shockwave, what's happening? Everything is vibration and frequency. So this is the third in the series, I guess. We had everything is light, and then everything is fields. And tonight, everything is sound. I'm going to keep going with however many I can get away with. Let's see. Once the cleverness wears off. But let's get back to some tunes. And I'm going to do some zoomed in stuff on our Luna. I had a request earlier. What did you want me to play? What did you want me to play? Dream Me. Gotcha. I gotcha. So yeah, also, before I get up, tell me if you want me to take a look at a particular spot on the moon besides Aristarchus, and I'll zoom in there as well. Yeah, I see Shockwave shouting out Halton ARP in the chat. I'll take this opportunity to do the same. If you haven't checked out Halton Chip ARP, Halton ARP, only a couple of lectures that he's given, but just really groundbreaking, and what a sad story that he didn't get his due in his lifetime. In fact, he got banned from doing astronomy at Mount Wilson. Let me find a link here and post it in. Also zoomed in at Aristarchus right now. A little less sharp than I thought it would be, but still we can see Schroeder's Valley pretty clearly, the two split, the fork of the tail of Herodotus, or maybe not connected to Herodotus, which is the flat-planed gray crater to the left. And then, of course, the corner is Aristarchus crater, and the whole thing is Aristarchus plateau. See the interesting snakehead, kind of snake, not only snakehead, but like snaking canal or channel. So this whole sinuous rill versus the sinuous rill being a volcanic lava tube versus being an electric arc moving across the surface is really fascinating. I got Halton art pulled up here, trying to do...
Objections.
Okay, don't copyright me. Let's copy this link right here. I was just also going to respond, Fantasy. I tend to not have a lot of luck with the meteor showers, so I don't set up the wide field, but that being said, I haven't set up the new Sony A7 yet, which has a great lens, so maybe I'll have better luck with the new camera. The link I just posted is Halton Arp's lecture on intrinsic redshift, and he's one of the few people that actually puts together a coherent, cogent argument for the fact that not only is redshift not a good measure for distance in space, but also that it very possibly could be interpreted as the age and the heat of birthed spiral galaxies. So instead of spiral galaxies emerging from nothing, spiral galaxies are actually birthed along the arms of other spiral galaxies, the same way people are birthed of people. And likely moons are birthed of planets. So you have this cascading idea of reproduction of the larger whole. And so Halton Arp takes all these photos, uses the Mount Wilson Observatory and also other X-ray observatories to gather some data to prove that there were certain instances, too many instances to make it for it to just be a fluke, that there were stars, quasars, minor spiral galaxies that seemed to be attached in some way with nebular cloud, yet had completely different redshifts. And so the idea of redshift and blue shift is the idea of the expanding universe, and scientists, astronomers, tend to use redshift as one of the key markers in terms of determining distance in space. And so anyway, Halton Arp is truly an unsung hero, and any opportunity I get to talk about him and link to it is a good one. So thanks, Shockwave. That was a real quick summation of it, but he's really not only brilliant, but like you kind of see what a scientist who does actual research and who speaks to people with I don't want to say respectfully, because it's kind of a weird term. It's more like treats people with respect when he talks about science, and you see the huge difference between the scientists of today and the YouTube armchair scientists, and somebody like Halton Arp, who is truly brilliant and speaks plainly and respectfully to everybody. Wish we had more videos of him, honestly. Quantized redshift, right? But the idea of quantization is really interesting, because of course there is all the distance between quantizing, but really the space in between, the counter space between instantiation of reality, has been really talked about from a lot of different vantage points, especially this whole Dan Winter neg-entropic version where, matter imploding, these are the foci that create this photon-electron coupling, this dipole moment. It's all these different people talk about it, but it's really just self and other experiencing a moment, creating the next moment, and symmetrically creating a past moment, and recursively at every scale. That's the simple way I kind of think about it. Let's see. Silent Murmur is saying, I view redshift, blue shift as contextual locations of stars in relation to our solar system around the Milky Way. Contextual locations. So that's the thing. So Halton Arp, among other people, he was really the preeminent source of this particular knowledge at the time. I would say, because he's the one who took all the photos and really did the scientific assessments in a way that was, I think, the most robust version of disproving, or at least questioning, the idea of redshift being solely a measure of distance in space, versus maybe not even being a measure of distance, but a measure of age and heat, essentially. So as galaxies are birthed, their redshift is high, And as they cool off, the redshift is blue. It doesn't mean they're actually moving away from us. It just means that they are growing up. And he proved it by showing galaxies that were on the minor galaxies that were on the arms of larger galaxies, larger spiral galaxies. And you could see the connection between them in the X-ray and gamma. And it's just, you have to either believe your eyes or believe narrative that we've had over the years, that when we look into space, that the redshift of the stars is due to the universe expanding, and that we're looking, trillions of years into the past. Yet, if you take into account this idea from Halton Arp, and then you also consider the idea of Einstein's original idea of variable speed of light, and variable speed of light explaining a lot of things that we have questions for today, then you have a completely different understanding of space than we have today, in terms of size, in terms of how it operates. And then you take the interconnectivity of the electric universe and filaments, and our popular version of space is just actually really, really off and misleading. So let's see. Radio Bridges. Sorry, I'm just reading some of these comments, and I see TomCan48. What's going on? Maps Bolt. The song is Fire. Ola Ola. On vacation. Awesome. Good to see you, Maps Bolt. Been a while. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up here. David, peace out. Have a blessed night. Okay. So yeah, definitely check out Halton Arp if you have not, and share him if you find it interesting, because so few people know about Halton Arp, and he's truly legendary. Alright, rolling up to 1 a.m. here. That was No We Can Survive. Appreciate everybody hanging out. I see Douglas Perry in the chat. What's happening? Welcome. I see Vicky, Wild Vicky. What's going on? Nice to see you. Hot enough for you? It is sweltering in the south. Again, not complaining. I love it. It's like being in the womb constantly. Shockwave says, the universe is conscious, and that consciousness flows through everything everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I guess we totally agree on that. I think my point is that the space between people, right, even though I feel like people who have been aware of this for a long time have always felt like, yes, there's not nothingness between us. There is either ether or substance or matter or whatever it may be. But I think for me, the new understanding of it to feel like that everything, not only between me and a table, for example, or me and another person, or us and the moon, but there is not only that there is something within that space, not nothingness, but that this nothingness also has intelligence and self-awareness. So it's a co-creative process of everything surrounding us as well as us and every other object. And that kind of holistic understanding makes things way more complicated, but also way more fulfilling, because you start to realize you're like, the idea that is really the through line that a lot of the science portrays today is abandonment, is orphanage, is Goldilocks zone, is cosmological constant, is like a luck of the draw, bags of human meat sacks, total randomness of existence, versus the clear order and self-awareness and relativistic nature of the frame of reference of the universe being highly subjective and completely something that is not only reliant but necessitates existence and consciousness to even be itself. So I think that's more of the new thinking for me. Crystals are definitely conscious. Everything is conscious simply because, not simply. I want to move away from that type of language, but it's making me think of a concept that I wanted to talk about, which is that, again, it's a bit whiny about today's language, contemporary language about science, but there's the diminishment of concepts. So, for example, when people talk about the lunar magnetic field, almost every article that I found, the moon doesn't really have a magnetic field. It's 1,000th the magnetic field of the Earth. And I'm like, what is this incessant need? I feel like I'm stuttering a little bit, but whatever. What is this incessant desire to add diminutive adjectives to these concepts? Why can't you just say the moon has a magnetic field and it's this? The moon has a much weaker magnetic field than the Earth. There's this kind of weird dramatic thing where they want people to never consider this idea that everything basically is magnetic at every scale. Right? So they want to kind of, and I say they again, the proverbial they, the media, the consensus science, whatever it may be, tries to diminish the value of the fact that everything subatomically or whatever at the quantum scale not only is electric, but of course now I'm getting this weird response 13. So weird. I checked all the software and now, of course, as I'm talking about it. So the hand remote is giving me this weird error the last couple of nights, just like non-responsive. At least the tracking is staying okay. But so it's mostly about the lunar magnetic field. So there's this whole debate about how moon rocks show a certain level of magnetism that is really just not, it's a negligible amount of magnetism, and therefore there's this consensus idea that the moon has no magnetic field. But and the way magnetic fields arise is from a molten core spinning, creating a magnetic field. But if we look at it from the electric universe or plasma perspective, if planets and humans and particles are powered from the ether, from the outside. Therefore, a magnetic field will emerge in pretty much everything at every scale. And therefore, the moon, whether or not the magnetic field is weak, still has a damn magnetic field. So this idea that it's always like, no, it really doesn't, no, magnetic field, really, no, like, definitely no. It's just so weird to me, that type of, like, insistence on doing it and, like, distorting and, like, twisting the language to make people never consider the fact that, yes, of course, everything, absolutely, at every scale, it has a magnetic field. Whether or not it's weak, it doesn't matter. It has a it's a field, right? And the field is what matters. It has nothing to do with the strength of the field, right? Because you could the strength of a field is purely relative to the frame of reference of viewing that field. So the same way you look at a creature that's smaller than you, their so-called defenses are much weaker than yours. Does it make it weaker at their scale? No. At their scale, their defenses are relative and powerful. So anyway, that's what I was trying to say when I was stuttering earlier, but it annoys me. It's like, it's in Wiki, it's in Quora, it's on phys.org, it's on space.com, it's on NASA. It's this constant language about diminishing the Earth's the moon's magnetic field versus the Earth's magnetic field. But now the Earth's magnetic field is very powerful, but the Earth is like an active, vibrating, oscillating creature that's like very high radiation with all the people and the solar energy coming in. And the moon is highly overpowered by the Earth's magnetic field, right? And also the sun's magnetic field. And therefore, the moon's magnetic field may appear weak, but to say that it doesn't exist, and then in the next sentence to say, oh, but it does exist, but it's actually very weak. Yeah, but so who gives a crap? Like, it's there, and it's important because the magnetic field, in very simplistic terms, is what holds this etheric plasma bubble around the moon, which is the story and the history and the life of the moon, right? It's a very thin layer, but it is the entire history of the surface of the moon. Like the moon, so if you imagine that the instantiation of life is moment to moment, the moon has to keep a certain shape, like humans have to keep a certain shape. The moon doesn't just appear as a shape, it has to remember itself from moment of instantiation to the next. And therefore, its surface is encoded within its etheric field. That's how it knows what it looks like, even though it's the moon. Let's see. Gosh, there's a lot of chat tonight. I love it. Renegade Shockwave, you going at it. I can barely read, y'all. My eyes are like screwing each other at this point. But anyway, we got sinus iridum over here. Which is looking awesome, like that, like a wrench, like half a hexagon. Let's see if I can't scribble a little bit. Let's doodle. It feels like a Saturday night, but what is it? Like, what is it, Tuesday? It's damn Tuesday, y'all. That ain't working. That's not the way you do it. Let me tell you. Alright, I'm feeling pretty goofy. Let's see, why are you not letting me scribble? It's not working, y'all. I don't know what the deal is. That's annoying. Yeah, this computer, it's like one of these things where I don't touch anything, then I come to the computer and something weird is wrong with it. It's like, I don't want to say it's cursed, but it certainly feels like it's cursed. I know, it's a Wednesday for you. Yeah, well, it is. I guess it's Wednesday here, too. That's true. Shockwave says, I think it did when we disconnected polar configuration, da-da-da. All right, let's keep moving over here. Either way, lovely view of Sinus Iridum, the Bay of Rainbows. This is north of Mare Imbrium. And above that, we have Mare Frigoris, the Sea of Cold. And to the left, the Terminator line, revealing a little bit more of Mare Frigoris. Now let's go down to the right. We'll see Plato. We'll see the little scattering of ejecta or sputtering of electric discharge. And the kind of cut in the not the Apennines. Those are the Alps. The Valles Alpes is that really sharp cut underneath Plato crater, the dark central crater that you see. If we follow it down, see Autolycus and Cassini and Eratosthenes coming up. Let's check out Copernicus. It's like it's both really sharp and blurry for some reason. I can't tell. Maybe it's just like the haze surrounding the moon tonight. Lots of nice detail, but also a little bit fuzzy. Maybe it's just my eyes. Shockwave says, everyone and every living animal have magnetic crystals in their brains. So I think, like, that's an idea, right? But if you really imagine it, like, absolutely every quantum unit has a magnetic field. And that magnetic field is not only its own field, so the quantum point of existence, the photon electron coupling, the dipole moment, the Big Bang, the mini Big Bang, the membranes touching, the moment God spoke into the ether, whatever you want to call that moment of focal awareness of consciousness, an instantiation of reality, then you have a field, and that field contains the information, self-organization, attraction, repulsion, storage of information, geometric constants, and it in and of itself now starts to create other foci next to it. So it's got to be much more ubiquitous than simply, magnetic crystals. Not to be, well, excuse me, but let me not to explain it to you too much, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, I just feel like that's the narrative we've been told, like, oh, blah, 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 animals have magnetic crystals in their nose, and people think about, like, particulate, and they think that the body is separate from these crystals. But if you imagine it truly, like, it must be at the very quantum scale. Absolutely every cell in the body has its own field. Every group of cells and just on and on. Think about the fractal recursion of people and families and cities and towns and countries and on and on. It must be the same way all the way down, all the way up. Therefore, we don't know the point of origin of existence. We also don't know how big the universe is or even how small it is. It's only... And the reason we don't know... I want to talk about something about dimensionality, like dimensions, and people being really keen on this idea that there are 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions of time, and 11 dimensions in quantum mechanics, and so on and so forth. But over the years, I've started to realize, like, this is just like this weird playground, this kind of mire, this quicksand discussion about dimensions, where people get really hung up on this idea of either salvationism or escapism again, because it's like people want a 4th or 5th or 11th dimension to get out of this 3-dimensional world. Ultimately, that's the only reason it would be appealing deep down. I think people are just intrigued by either fluffy language, 11 dimensions, oh my god, there are other things that we can't see, or like, it's 6-dimensional, and therefore at some point I'm going to get out of this lousy 3-dimensional, 4th-dimensional universe and get to 6 dimensions, and therefore, because the number is higher, then better. I mean, I'm kind of just trying to, like, articulate a point here, but if you think about it like that, you're like, why do same thing with, like, wanting to meet aliens, or the same reason I talk about, like, not needing alien bases on the moon to make the moon interesting. Like, the moon's really interesting without aliens. Like, if there are aliens, great, but, like, we've come to really look at the moon and be like, oh, yeah, that's really boring. Show me alien bases on the moon, I mean, in the beginning, when I first started the show, that's like, everyone's like, what about the bases on the moon? And I'm like, but the moon, like, already crazy, doesn't need another moon. You don't need Rahu, you don't need Planet 9, you don't need the Nibiru, like, you don't need the Anunnaki to make space actually fascinating. Space is already really fascinating. So when you break through the conspiracy mire You start to realize you're like, well, the dimensionality of the universe must be infinite. It's not 3, 4, 12, 11. 3 dimensions, and the 4th dimension of time is the fewest amount of dimensions you can measure the universe with. However, if you imagine motion and the idea that everything wiggles, the number of dimensions is actually dimension. If you imagine dimensions being an x, y, z, and vector dimension, then dimensions are infinite, because the possibility of the wiggle is infinite, and we wiggle in every single dimension. So therefore there is no ascending to another dimension, and there is no life that coexists side by side with us in another dimension. I just don't think those things really exist. I think like we already are the crazy, amazing thing. There doesn't need to be more. I think that's part of the big self-revelatory Zen, awakening, so to speak, is to realize like you don't need more to make the world interesting. The world is, existence itself is already the amazing thing. Let's see. I'm moonsplaining. Cassini always reminds me of zucchini. Zucchini AB crater, greater than zucchini. Let's see. Silent Murmur says, all animals contain liquid crystal and magnetite. It's not imaginary. Those elements are there in liquid mode or elemental phase shift. I mean, yeah, but I guess maybe that's what you said earlier, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, like this idea of a certain type of thing, only this one thing is magnetic. That's what I'm trying to say is kind of a weird way that popular science describes things. It says this thing has this thing, but it's only this thing. And I'm saying like the idea that people having magnetic crystals, like ferric blood, for example, or blood, is red because of the iron particulate, right? But at the very core, at the very quantum level, if you took it to the smallest possible point, ultimately that would be the magnetic field, and then upwards and downwards. At the smallest possible scale, it's not necessarily time crystals, so to speak, but it also is that. But it's not just that. Whimsical Renegade says, time is merely motion. Thanks, Shockwave. Yeah, right? Like, time is the motion of the Earth around the sun. Well, I linked to it in my last video, the dyslexic artist theory of what time is. And I really like the idea of symmetrical time, right? So time is literally created at the moment the next moment is created. So time is actually part. It's not even that. Time is purely so actually what really the dyslexic artist is saying is that time is experiential. Time is purely us experiencing the flow of creating and storing information. So we create the future moment and we store the echo of the prior moment. And at the very center is the frame of reference. And that continual creation or absorption and emission is actually what we experience as the flow of time. And the reason time is variable and there's time dilation is that time is relativistic to the frame of reference. So at the very smallest scale, that's why creatures live for a day and humans live for 80 years and planets live for millions of years. At every scale, there's a certain type of vibratory time dilation where like planets experience time differently than humans, differently than ants. So I feel like time and gravity too. So if you imagine that gravity and time are both a process that occur within every instantiation of reality. So every human has their own time and their own gravity. And every quantum particle has its own time and its own gravity, and every planet has its own time and its own gravity. And that's how it would actually work for everything to have its own frame of reference version of the greater forces and then you answer everything. Then light is a variable speed of light makes sense. Gravity makes sense. But right now we live in this ubiquitous speed of light for everything, this linear version of space, and things are not really like that. Things are actually orderly, and they have a cascade to them. All right, got a little break here, get something to drink, play some groovy jams. freaking golden when your sketchy little doodle program starts to work. So let me sketch or show you what I've been sketching. So look, I mean, this type of thing, I'm just sitting here, just a regular person, just looking at our moon, and we got shapes. We got really sharp, distinct geometry on the surface. And it's kind of unreal that if you look up this phenomenon anywhere online, you just don't find any reference to it at all. Even my videos don't show up. I look on my own channel, I'm like, hexagons on the moon, and I see like 50 videos that have nothing to do with hexagons on the moon, and then my video like 7 pages deep. Like, even the Thunderbolts Project videos don't have a title about hexagons on the moon. Not a single space channel has ever discussed it, ever. I mean, literally ever. And to me, it's just absolutely profoundly fascinating that that's the case. To me, just once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's just like the most ridiculous possible thing. And so this is just a very crude scribble on top of the key parts of the moon that everyone can see with their own squinty eyes that they made. Their squinty eyes. Their wide eyes, their wide lunar eyes. So Maricrisium, Tranquility, Serenity, Imbrium, right here Borealis, and the two, like the butter knife lines off of Tycho. And what else we got? Nectaris, Fecunditatis, and just the relationship between Serenity and Tranquility already just does the work, which is the pentagon against the hexagon. You see the filamentary action if you know what you're looking for. You see the cross-section of the torus. You see the hypotrochoid or the hyperboloid. The inherent, intrinsic, fundamental geometry outlined in Buddy's set is right here. Let's see. I was going to quickly make a note, about the singularity thing. So, the idea of the singularity is also, it's a lot of different, not a lot, but a few different versions of what that really means. So when you say singularity, you have to you maybe have to specify what you mean by that. But when I was saying in the chat that there's no singularity, it makes sense that we think that there's just one of something, but really one has to be experienced by something else. And one has to be in relation to another thing. So you can't see anything without something else. And so the duality of reality is both singular and dual simultaneously. Therefore, it's almost like a non sequitur. So even thinking about it just doesn't really, just kind of leads you down this rabbit hole of saying everything is at a point. But really, as soon as a point manifests, then other points manifest. Therefore, it's this kind of moving. It's a moving. I don't know. I think the idea of a singularity makes you think about the wrong thing, maybe, or at least it makes me think about the wrong thing. But so the relational quality. The relational shapes between the large mare on the moon, the Maria on the moon, is fascinating, right? Because why would a large impact, or like a meteor from somewhere, hit the moon and then create this feature? Or several of these, like tons and tons of meteors, like some large ones, some small ones, or tons of small ones just hitting this one place. Right, if you look at, like what I said, the JPL animation of the moon's formation, you imagine that there are all this late heavy bombardment period and wherever else you had bombardment to create this shape ultimately that we have today and that we've had for a few hundred years, at least since the beginning of when people recorded viewing the moon. So I say that that's really silly, though, but because all the planets and all the lunar surfaces and the Earth is all hexagonal top to bottom, right? So it's to make it even I'm susceptible to making it like, oh my god, it's just these hexagons. No, but it's like it's all of it, right? Absolutely everything at every scale ultimately looks like this because of the fact that things are spherical, circular, emanate outwards, create boundary layers. Then you have this geometry. You have lattice structure on the sun. You have lattice structure on lunar geology. You have lattice structure on Earth geology. You have lattice structure on human skin. You have it in crystals, on and on. So, yeah, this is really such a cool phase of the moon where you can see a lot of detail. The sharpness is extraordinary and the skies are so nice. But yeah, what's also cool is that it's not just a hexagon against a hexagon. It's also this kind of incommensurability idea, and things are not exactly symmetrical, right? So things are kind of ebbing one way or another. And in this case, you have a pentagon against a hexagon. You have potential against settledness, if you follow the kind of the mystical nature of the 5 against the 6. But then you have, of course, 5 against 6 as a harmonic relationship. So the proposition here is that you have these meteors coming and crashing into the moon, creating this shape and all these other shapes. Or you have an electrical filament that is in glow mode and in oscillation, sympathetic resonance with another larger body or smaller body, or ejected from Jupiter or wherever it may have come from. We don't know exactly. But these electric arcs in glow mode moving across the surface with a certain amount, certain type of regolith and iron, titanium, producing new elements. Of course, there's the whole transmutation of elements and releasing of what we have on the surface now, which is this kind of floating particulate which glows in the solar radiation. But really it's noble gases, kryptonite, argon, and you have several different types of metallic. Right now I'm not really able to think about all of them, but is it like it's magnesium? I don't know. Now I'm starting to forget. But either way, you do have this kind of surface layer to the moon where particles are essentially floating electrostatically, and they ultimately glow because they are oscillating along a filament, I believe, and they have remnant magnetism, quote unquote. But again, remnant magnetism is still magnetism, even if it's left over. Like even that word remnant is just kind of this very poetic term which makes you think about magnetism in a really strange way. So remnant magnetism, all it means is that there is magnetism left on the moon, right? So, but saying remnant makes it feel like, oh, it's not really anything. Please don't look here. Don't look at magnetism on the moon. It's really barely anything at all. Now every term like that, I feel like it was like planned in a room with a computer where they're like, how can we make people never consider that the moon is magnetic? Let's call it remnant magnetism. People will be distracted by that. Al Gore's rhythm. Al Gore's rhythm. So electric arc moving across the surface, and then what happens is the reason you get these shapes, and they are imprints of the lightning bolts. So lightning bolts cascade along. Let's actually talk about this for a second, because it's not immediately apparent what a line is even. So a line is 2 points, right? So you have a point, and you have a line. If you draw a vector from point to point. If you have a point and a point and a point and a point. Sorry, I know it's really hot and I'm kind of squeaking when I talk, so forgive the mouth noises. Try and drink and stay hydrated here. So, bunch of points, line, 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 right? You could also have point, 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 and you get a line. But what if you add noise or disturbance to these particles? Then you kind of get this wiggle. What if you add a lot of disturbance and you trace the vector? Right? You start to get these different fronts. Then you have sinusoidal waves, and you have quantized steppings, right? You have saw waves. And so each of these creates, I imagine, a version, like an element on the periodic table, or a bunch of different elements. Or it's like the quantization of our reality is based on these types of frequency oscillations. But ultimately, it's disturbances, it's perturbations in the field. The field is, and we experience these things as nodal points. So our life is like basically one of these. So a Birkeland current, or an electrical filament, or a Lichtenberg figure is basically this, right? And then it forks. Forking bastage, but essentially forks. This is our lifeline. This is the hand. When you look at your hand and you see these patterns, people tend to think, oh yeah, whatever, that's just, that's just my hand. But look at your hand. It has all these patterns in it for a reason. Fourier transform. That's also like, yeah, it's totally true. People have already... oh my, Copper Trops. Great to see you. My love. It's been a while. I hope you're doing well. How are the koi? Are the koi doing well? Yeah, Mimsical Renegade, I was talking about. Yeah, Fourier transform. So mathematical formulas that show these shapes are, I don't want to say another gateway beyond understanding it, but people tend to use, again, like fancy mathematical language to describe these patterns. So that was my reaction to what you said, but totally correct. But it's really kind of just like yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 no, 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 yes, yes, no, no, no. It's choices, right? These very quick choices creates the wiggle. And so every quantum particle is doing that. Every human is doing that. Every planet is doing that. And then all together, you create the symphonic, this dissonant, sometimes dissonant, sometimes harmonically sound universe. But what's so cool is that it only exists in relation to the counter space, and so we are in the image of the grander whole, right? The entire universe, like 95% of dark matter or whatever, impinges upon the 5% that is luminous that we can see. And it's so amazing because it's not just as it pushing pressure on us, but we are like, it's like almost a reverse mold. And so we are in the image of the greater whole all the time. True Man Zoo, what's going on? Shockwave says craters are imprints of arc discharges. Then there's the etching. Then there's the etching of glow mode. Not understanding, but yeah. Either way, agree with all the words in this sentence. NGC says our fingers can be magnets. Have you ever played with metal shavings? You can make them dance around. Yeah, I think it's kind of a scalar thing, right? So every one of those shavings has its own little field, and because we have ferric blood, you put your finger, and we also have an electric field around the body that would amplify it, and of course then you have attentive focus, where if you can focus your magnetism, and some people can do it better than others, I bet you could move little filaments around with your fingertips. I didn't, yeah, there is no missing matter at all. I only reference dark matter because that's the common term for it, but there's no mystery to dark matter. Dark matter is actually the entire ether, which is light, and the perturbations in the ether create the luminous plasma that we see. And so the coexistence of luminous plasma and dark mode plasma, which we understand, or mostly understand, is not mysterious at all. Because, like I said, we are in the image of what seems to be so mysterious. It's really like that. If you listen to these scientists who are like so confused by their own existence, all you have to do is look in the mirror and realize that you made your own body, because you're making your own body right now. And you being conscious at all means you're bringing forth the image of the planets and all the stars and other people at every given moment. You're already doing God-level stuff constantly, yet people are like, no, that's too arrogant. Let's just imagine another God, this other thing, and give them the responsibility. But But no, you're responsible for your own existence and creating your own internal organs and putting them in the right place. And you're responsible for, and when I say you, I mean like you specifically. If you go and look at yourself in the mirror right now, whatever you imagine our reality, holographic or simulation to be, it doesn't really matter, because right now the instantiation of what you exist in right now is enough to determine the fact that you are already doing God-level stuff constantly. Bringing life into existence, killing life by eating or by murder or whatever, or just by killing your own body. And you also bring yourself into existence, like after you leave the womb, you basically do all the other things, growing your skin, growing your bones, growing your heart, liver, lungs, eyes, making them all work. You also wake yourself up from dreams. You have an internal clock. You can't articulate any of it, but it all works. And you could attribute it to an invisible God or genetic code or evolution or abstract ideas, but in fact it's really just you. Like the physical answer to that, the very simple and more rational answer, is that the self does all these things. And how does it do it? In relation to field, by instantiating reality based on a certain rule set. Like Coffer says, let's see. Coffer says, I'm so stupid. Why did I make my body so fat? I blame weed. It's a true affliction, the hunger. Especially, I'm so shocked at how hungry I am lately, especially in the summer. But you sweat it off. I don't know. Maybe it's a time when we're all being cooked. What did I miss? Did I miss anything? Oh, I also want to address a comment. Somebody left me a comment on one of the videos that said I use big scientific terms to sell people theories or some shit like that. And I just don't even know how to respond to that, but it's essentially to say, like, I'm not trying to sell anyone anything on this channel ever. Like, I think these ideas are just have so much responsibility with them that, like, you'd have to really want to take them on. So I don't know, like, none of this is appealing to most people, to take responsibility for growing your own body and your own death and all of existence, bring it into play. That's a huge responsibility for most people. So I don't get on here trying to get everybody on board to a concept. That's for sure. I tend to want to eat less and heat too, but I don't know why. Lately, with all the delivery stuff, I can just order anything I want. All right, I'm hunched over here because I realize this microphone is just breaking, of course, and the scope is breaking, and it's pretty funny. Let's play some old school catch over here, and I'll stretch. But you can see all the wiggles and the filaments and the hexagons, and not a circle in sight, not an ellipse in sight, not a meteoric impact. I really think maybe a few. But far more organization than just random impacts. Far more.
I left home at 17. Couldn't tell you, was living the dream. What could I do? For a while I played the field. How could I prove the hidden yield without the blues to hear? My heart was cool and inseparable like motion and desire. All our scars have really faded, don't retire. Just believe, soul is traveling. Just believe, soul is traveling. Oh, past the pawns on the electric solar sphere. My descriptions of your life was near, and then you were gone. I was reflected lines, and we were erased from time. No wheel as sweet as I. No way, just to live. No way, soul and limbs traveling. No way, traveling. Just believe, soul is traveling. Do you know why I've been beaten from the heart? I know, no lie. I've been thinking about you all night. Why? No why. I've been waiting for your white light. No why. I've been thinking that you should be mine. So call me up, and let's get down. So call me up, and let's get down. Oh, you send me messages across the cosmic network, and you send me pictures from across the astral plane, and you send me cryptic kisses across the matching network. So call me up, and let's get down. So call me up, and let's get down. Je t'attends, mon amour insaturel, ainsi la même que la même cimère, achetant la éternelle, avec en son billet. Je suis la même que ton avant, l'année chaque jour. Je t'attends, mon amour, avec les mecs sans agrévé. Et c'est mon âme magnétique, c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est mon amour magnifique. Cool running, no way.
Alrighty, just wanted to let the song play out, but yeah, so it's just a matter of how much light is being absorbed by the sensor on the camera, and so if you blast it out right here, like these new cameras are just amazing where you can have this level of detail and not have the noise overpower in terms of signal to noise. But yeah, these are the moons of Saturn, so you can see, and honestly, there's the moon, right? Our real, like our regular moon that's casting a lot of light on the sky right now, and Saturn is at a particular distance from us. It is much further than I've noticed. I've noticed that. So we're not getting like the best shot of Saturn, but still, this is, I gotta say, it's pretty incredible. Like I said in the chat, I'm not sure exactly which is which, but the brightest one is probably Titan. You got Rhea, Dione, Tethys, Enceladus, Iapetus, and probably those are them for now. But yeah, you could probably see stars as well. And then so Saturn detail is blown out entirely because the light reflected off of Saturn, and also it's emissive and also reflective. So Saturn is reflecting and also glowing. But yeah, if you absorb that much light being reflected from Saturn, it ends up blowing out like that. Let's see what you wrote in the chat. You wonder if the flashes are cosmic rays. I don't know. I'm not sure, only because the sensor hotspots the sensor produces a ton of noise. It's really hard to tell which like little white streak or white spot is actually like, you know, it's hard to determine which is which, possibly. But yeah, so this is the 8-inch scope with the Sony attached and no other lenses. So it's a pretty good shot, and I also zoomed in the actual image. But yeah, the entire setup of it tonight is really wonderful, and it's so nice to see Saturn on a regular basis. I kind of been missing it, to be honest. Saturn is amazingly reflective. Yep. Copper, so nice to see you too. Did I miss anybody in the chat? Anything happen? Yeah, let's keep going with the tunes here. I'm chilling with y'all. We'll stay on Saturn for a bit longer and then head back to the moon. We got like, I wonder if Jupiter is close by. Jupiter, it's been a bit. Jupiter is far up there. I don't know. What else we got? Fomalhaut, Vesta. Yeah, I think that's it. In a good way. Just enough, the moon and Saturn tonight. So let's keep going with the tunes. Which tune shall I play now? What about something like... Yeah, let's play something from Vibration Theater. Let's start from the top. was a 13-minute song. I let it go. I think that's maybe the first time I've played that whole thing all the way through in a long time. Maybe first time ever. I see Lambda in the chat. What's going on? Flipski. What else did I miss? So I was sitting here prowling our surface, seeing some of these elongated craters. Incredible detail. Incroyable. Let me adjust some of this contrast so we can see it a bit better. I want to pull up the atlas and make sure I'm telling you the right names. I feel like this is one of the interesting features. Talk about, of course, the difference between impact and electric. That's always one of the first things I think of. And I think I have to reset this. Let's see, new, don't save. And pull up the atlas. Alright, so this is along the terminator. And so it's to the left of Tycho crater. My gut is saying Schiller. Schickard. No, it's Schiller. Right. Okay. So Schiller crater, 179 kilometers across, 11,000 feet deep. So let's just quickly scribble something on top of this. Just why not? Because I don't think anyone's really done it before. So look at this shape right here. Sorry, let's adjust it a bit more. Really great detail, gosh. So nice. So, Schiller crater. This is one of the really interesting ones, partially because it's hard to tell if it's a hexagon or a platonic, but you do see that it comes to a point at the top, so you do have a vertex or an angle right there to account for, and then you kind of see a corner right there, which is, it's a very, very elongated hexagon ultimately. And I'm not trying to force hexagons on it. It's obvious that things ultimately end up having sides, because really what this kind of starts as is a smooth ellipse and then kind of gets pressured from the outside to turn into having a more structured boundary layer, a more hexagonal boundary layer. So Schiller is an interesting one as well, thinking about it in terms of, is this something that you have an impact in the late heavy bombardment creating this thing, or is this an electrical arcing lightning bolt moving across the surface, creating like a melted surface and leaving this more geometric shape, cleaner, more laser cut, versus like an impact or something moving across the surface and hitting the moon. The fact that it's kind of symmetrical on both sides and it's organized, and you also don't have, you know, any remnants of the actual object. Now, granted, you could say things get pulverized or things get strewn about the surface, or over the years things will disappear, but you have to imagine these craters and these features are massive. And so if you see especially the laboratory experiments with craters that drop like those steel balls into sand plates, like you need this giant steel ball, and where are the remnants of that in all these different craters? So that's kind of not such a huge, it's not a sticking point for me. Mostly it's the geometry and the fact that really alternatively there could be a theory that made more sense than the late heavy bombardment. Looks like a big doobie. It does look like a big doobie, but then again, when you're looking for doobies, everything looks like a big doobie. It's like the Mirage, for the Stoner Mirage. Alright, let's get down here. I have it pretty bright here, but let's look at these interesting striations coming off of Tycho crater, while it's this bright. You see this? What's so cool about this is that it's tangential to Tycho or Tycho. And Tycho, you can see right there at the corner already. It's, of course, eroded and moved around, and it's not exactly hexagonal, but it's more dodecahedral. But yeah, this type of, again, so we have either impact or electric, and what would this mark be from an impact? You know, wouldn't it want to emanate from, you'd think, from a normal, right? From the center of the crater. It doesn't look like it actually spilled off of the crater. It actually just looks like it was imprinted upon the surface. So again, you have these two different theories where this is either ejecta or this is an electrical arc moving across the surface, leaving its mark, and then creating a snap discharge. It's not so complicated. It's really interesting that, like, once you get the hang of it, you can see all these different features. And yeah, it's really, you know, you do see those ejecta experiments, and it looks similar to some of these features that we see, especially around Copernicus. Like, let's look at Copernicus for a second. Or rather, let's just note the two striations coming out of Tycho right here, the butter path. It just looks like somebody smudged their finger through butter, but it really looks filamentary to me. And then you go up here and you got Borealis, which somehow, with the weirdest name possible, I somehow always remember this crater's name. So Borealis right there, hexagonal, along the butter knife trail. And you go up a bit further. That is that Gassendi? What is that? Let me get this right. That is Doppelmayr? No, it is Gassendi. Yep, fuck yeah. Oh man, sometimes I'm like, oh, I've totally forgotten the moon. I forgot everything. But Gassendi is interesting, right? So Gassendi is one of these ringed, like, open ringed amphitheater craters, dodecahedral, with a preferred crater on its rim, right? Perfect, like a diamond ring type structure. And you have the central peaks, right? And people who love the impact theory will say that the central peaks are what prove that it's impact related, because when you do it in the laboratory, you get this mound in the middle. But I would ask that, like, if you really zoom in and you see all the LRO photos and you just look at it right here, you can see that the structures in the middle are much more akin to when a discharge breaks after an electric arc across the surface. It snaps and it leaves a residue right in the center, and that residue is much sharper than the mounds that are created from impact-related incidences. And you could say that, yeah, the surrounding area filled out, and that's why it's flattened, but there's something boiled about the surface of these flat craters. Like this and Posidonius on Sea Serenity, we can take a look, and it's similar structure. The main thing is it's similar structure. Like, what are the odds that in a heavy bombardment period where you have tons and tons of meteor going all the way up and down, that you have this idea that mare and, well, what's crazy is, like, let's say here's the fractal recursion part, which means just repeating the same shape at different sizes. And not to sound like pedantic or nerdy, but right, you got that's a scribble. Okay, let's not scribble. Let's try and hit that. Geometry on the rim of larger geometry. On the rim of larger geometry. What are the odds this is going to happen? And they all look similar, but they also appear at the same place on the vertice of pentagonal and primitive geometry, polygonal geometry. So you see that, right? So let's quickly look at Sea of Serenity and Posidonius, and I'll show you the recursive nature of this appearing on the other side of the moon independently. Come on, remote. Thank you. Thank you. Copernicus. Sorry, I'm not reading the chat right now. I'm just trying to focus on this one little thing so I don't lose track. I always feel like I start something I never finish. So let's get here. Okay, so Posidonius at this phase is a little tricky, but you can kind of see. So because the moon is rotated and it's at this particular phase, usually this is rotated more to the left. But anyway, right here, Posidonius, Sea of Serenity, and then Posidonius A. So smaller crater on the rim of larger crater on the rim of larger mare. And then Gassendi earlier, you have a similar type, not Gassendi, but Sinus Iridum, which we'll go back to, has that kind of half of a wrench shape, like half of a hexagon baked into the side of a mare. Right, so let's go back to, let's move to the left and go to Mare Imbrium. Exciting, exciting. Check it out. So, Aristarchus looking great, but let's just get back here, and then you'll see, look how nice Sinus Iridum looks, but Sinus Iridum on the rim of Mare Imbrium. Just a repeated fractal from Sea of Serenity just now. So you see that it's like, what are the odds that all this is exactly like recursive fractaling of lunar geology is due to random impact, or is it due to these lightning bolt patterns which basically imprint their shape on the surface of the moon? Like even that little chicken foot looks like a like my remote doesn't want to work. Like we got Plato. Let's see. Where's my sketchy thing? So yeah. So Plato with a broken wall right there, but even at the broken wall, smaller crater on the rim of larger crater. I'm going to stop saying that. I know it's annoying if I repeat it. But anyway, Plato's looking good. Broken wall on the rim of Mare Imbrium. These features are really cool, very unique. Mons Tenerife, Mons Pico, little chicken foot right here. Electric discharge sputtering, or like impact meteors that just got stuck in the ground. Who knows? But very cool. And then let's look at another feature that really is difficult to prove one way or another if you don't believe that electric arcs can move across the surface. But if you believe that, then you see this feature right here. Valles Alpes, 300 kilometer long cut channel through a mountain range, the Alpine mountain range, Valles, what is it? Montes Alpes, and then Valles Alpes, right? And what scientists don't like to talk about here is that Valles Alpes has like a tiny little inner fractal version of the whole. So it's like a channel with a channel cut in between. There's no rubble, so there's no volcanic lava tube. There's no sinuousness to it. It's simply just like a laser cut across a mountain range. So very unexplained from standard lunar geology vantage point. Let's see. Shockwave. How were our lakes, rivers, channels, and soon created? Oh, you're talking to Renegade. Okay. So I'm going to keep going here. These are some of my favorite features, some of my favorite things on the moon. Where did we skip over? So let's take a look at Aristarchus again, because definitely if there were a court case in terms of impact versus electric, Aristarchus would be the key witness. Where is it? Not the key witness, the witness, but the primary evidence or whatever. Trying to make some funny courtroom analogy, but I'm going to give up. So let's look at this. So the amazing phase that we're at right now, which is like 95%, we got like 5% terminator past this point, but because it's just uncovering Aristarchus and we got some nice light coming from below, you get to see the kind of inner workings of Aristarchus crater right here. And that's very sloppy. How about that? So, little micro hexagonal dome, little lines inside glowing brightly because of the composite of gases and remnant magnetism, electrostatic magnetism. Right here, you've got, again, also geometry here, even though it's very small. What's that again? Herodotus. So Herodotus kind of comes to a little teardrop shape right there. Then you have Schroeder's Valley, which starts off with a little snake head. And of course, my scope tracking, come back. No, come back. Come on, please. No, just getting there. Okay, there we go. So anyway, Aristarchus Plateau, diamond shape, cut right into the surface, carved right into the surface. Then you have, really the culprit here is, well, my courtroom analogies are not working, but this forked channel, or sinuous rill, is really very interesting. It's like, how was this formed? And why does it mimic, you know, an electric arc moving across the surface? This is the type of feature that is left because of that. Not many other features, not many other events could create such a feature. I can make it even brighter still. So let me just do that. Take it up with NASA, right? Well, I'm out here filming the moon. I don't know what NASA's doing. Yeah, alright, so, like I said, out here filming the moon and trying to wrestle with the tracking device that doesn't want to stick, but still, you can see all the filaments under the surface of the moon. It's like ignoring them is folly. Alright. So, alright, this is particularly interesting because this is something you see quickly when you start viewing the moon on your own. And you start to realize, you're like, how was something like this formed? Schroeder's Valley. Vallis Scroteri, or Scroteri, the Scrotum Valley. And also the fact that Aristarchus crater, not just being like super bright, super luminous, but also being on the rim of a larger diamond-shaped, trapezoidal, well, not trapezoidal, really diamond or planar shape. This is, I think, such an interesting point. Like, not like I know any better, but there's really no discussion about this. It's not talked about very often. They have not sent missions to Aristarchus. Aristarchus would be the first place to go. Like, 100%. I mean, Clavius is interesting, but like, this is the place to go. So, anyway, Aristarchus Plateau, Aristarchus Crater, Herodotus, and then you see there's separation between Herodotus and Schroeder's Valley. And Thunderbolts Project has talked about it, Stuart Talbot, and who else talked about it? What's that cat? What's that cat's name? Ralph Juergens, Brian J. Ford. Those are the only two people who've ever talked about it. Definitely not NASA or anybody on YouTube who follows NASA. Like, why would they ever talk about how weird these structures are? Anyway, it's not weird. It's not spooky at all. In fact, it's just, it outlines electrical nature. And all you have to do is imagine that, not imagine, you just have to envision what you already know is true, which is electrical lightning bolts exist. And they exist at all scales, just like everything else exists at all scales. And therefore, then you can have electric arcing across the moon, and then you can explain really crazy looking features like what we're seeing right here, without having to say, you know, it's volcanic lava tubes, but there's no evidence for that. But maybe if we send robots and they'll break through and they'll see that it's volcanic lava tubes. But do you have any other theories? No volcanic lava tubes, right? I mean, what else? it's not tectonic overlapping of land masses, right? There are some regions that might look like tectonic overlap, but no, right? So it's either volcanic lava tubes or it's an electrical current that leaves its imprint across the surface of the moon. That's what we got, right? It's not such a huge debate, really. Also, like, I watch all the Electric Universe stuff, and I always feel like people are so reticent to ever decide to come to a conclusion. I think, like, I really feel like Wal Thornhill, like, deep down, feels like he's come to a conclusion. And I know that Buddy probably feels like he's come to a conclusion, which you got to laud Buddy if you're in the chat or you hear this later, Buddy James. Because Buddy really gets what he's talking about. Like, people who truly understand their shit, it's so great. But you feel like there's still these, maybe it's electric, or maybe electricity affects geology, or maybe electricity is consciousness. But, I mean, to be fair, Mel Atchison and Andy Hall in their last couple of years have kind of ended their series of videos on Thunderbolts Project with but all in all, I've told you all this stuff, but I actually really believe that it's true. So they kind of have gotten more firm on their conclusions. But I think at this point it's pretty obvious that this is kind of a starting point for understanding everything else. It's not like you have to. It's just weird that we believe that something like this is created from one instance or not one instance, but several instances of random meteoric impact, and then just a long period of time, and it's represented by an animation that was made 10 years ago, and that's the contemporary science on the moon. It's just crazy. Cyber Sally says, "Oh yeah, you figured out. Heck, it's just moonworms." Definitely, it's just frozen in stone. Silent Murmur says, "But how was the leafless branch feature formed?" Which leafless branch? Wait, let me see. Silent Murmur. Okay, so the shadow line has the exact same curve and dent area, like it's a leafless branch hovering in midair. I think when you kind of look at the moon and the harshness of the shadows, your eyes start to play tricks on you in terms of what's floating. But what you can really stick with is the forking nature of it. And you also have if you see right here, the snaking quality of it is so crazy because in fact they've done elevation tests and they realize if this were the mouth of the volcano and you had emanations and molten lava dripping, this goes back uphill. So this is more elevated than this region. So there's an interesting debate, but there isn't really a debate. There's just interesting research on this particular feature. Thunderbolts Project did about 3 videos where they reference this, and then Ralph Juergens and Brian J. Ford reference this in their documents, and pretty much no one else talks about how this feature may have been formed, even though if you look at this on the LRO high definition photos archive, you'll see that it's just it's pretty crazy to imagine this. This is one of those key pieces in understanding geology, because all geology is the same. And yeah, Aristarchus looks like a baseball field. Shockwave, take care. Catch you on the next one, bro. I love you. Be safe. Also, I appreciate you chatting up a storm, for real. So I appreciate that. Also, you brought up something earlier that got me started down the right rabbit hole tonight. All right, Aristarchus. That's one of my favorite regions. Oh man, 2:45 a.m. Rocking and rolling tonight. So where should we go next? Let's see. This is really one of the best phases. I don't know, you just get that kind of the sharpness of Sinus Iridum and the diamond nature of where, like, it's so cool how, check this out, this recursive nature of the diamond here and then the diamond subnet around Copernicus. I think it's even further than that. It's like that. Filaments all the way down. All right, let's play some tunes here. Let me stretch. Alright, y'all. It's almost 3 a.m. and again, like last night, the sleep hit me all at once. So, sharpie moon and a fun show tonight. Everything is sound, everything is fields. Man on moon buggies. Maybe. I hope it's true. Maybe it is. Either way, we got our moon right here. Don't need nobody else's story about the moon. Look at that. So crazy tonight. So I'll catch y'all on the next one. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. Probably won't miss the full moon unless the weather is crap. But it's been clement for Clementine lately, so I'm not gonna jinx it. Thanks everybody. I appreciate everybody who stopped by tonight. Old friends, new friends, mid friends. And hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow. Saw Saturn tonight. Talked about Aristarchus at length, which was really good. And continued to talk about the hexagons on the moon, electric consciousness. Definitely check out. Oh, talked about Halton ARP. Halton ARP needs more exposure. I wish Thunderbolts Project would do like a whole hour-long thing about Halton ARP, where Thal Warnhill is talking about things, and I don't know, it would be great. Skeptics are also getting old though too, so I don't know if we got to do anything, but I'm doing a little bit of this with y'all. Thanks ever so kindly to you, Cyber Sully, and True Man, NGC, and Flatplane, and Mimsicle, and Shockwave, and Vicky, and Jello, and Silent, and Landa. Let me see if I can get through everybody, at least here. Copper Tropicals, great to have you stop by. Man, that's all I got here, but everybody, Mary, Ellie, Jedi Princess, Miguel, I saw, there's Gnostic Chef, and if I missed you, sorry, I'll catch you on the next one for sure. Let our moon drift off. I really got to figure out this whole tracking issue, this response 17 not found. What the heck? What the heck? Weird, glitchy, spooky glitches. Alright everybody, have a great night. I'll catch you soon. Captain signing off and trying to find a song that is good for the now, good for the night. Alright, bon nuit y'all. Till next time.
Like you do, play the part. I'll be like you do in your heart. Smile like sapphire, my saffron sun. I'll be like you do. Real